don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Never tell me the odds.
The greatest idea in human history, the theory of evolution by natural selection.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
As a date with destiny. In order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive.
We're living in captivity, and it's time to break free.
Welcome to A Wilder Life with Eric Edmeades.
If you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things in life, trying to heal your mind, your body, and your spirit, and you still sort of felt trapped in a loop of not quite feeling yourself, if you've ever wondered whether the key to your health and your freedom and your purpose is less about doing more than living up to who you really are, then I think this episode of A Wilder Life might be interesting for you. You're going to love today's guest because we've got Emma Dunwoody, a master coach and a human design expert, and the host of the #1 human design podcast. Now, I have to tell you, I come into an interview like this with a degree of measured skepticism, except that recently, having done some human design work, my skepticism is being pushed. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Emma, welcome to A Wilder Life.
Thanks for having me. And I'm super excited that I have a skeptic here. So I'm like, fire away, let's do this.
You know, I guess I'll jump right into that. It's like, I'm actually a very big fan of psychometric tests. I mean, we use them in our businesses and, thank God the airlines have those because definitely creative people shouldn't be working in air traffic control. I'm a big fan of psychometric tests. I'm not such a big fan of horoscopes. I know I'm immediately going to turn off a bunch of people and they're going to go, oh, you're definitely a Sagittarius because you said that. I don't know. As a kid, we'd get the newspapers and they'd have the horoscopes in them. I always used to play this joke on my friends where I would like, oh, do you want me to read your horoscope? And they go, yeah. I knew they were a Virgo, so I'd read them Pisces. And they'd go, oh my God, that's just so me. That's just so exactly me this week. And I'm like, Jesus, because they were written that way. And so that's been my typical approach to, your personality being driven by the month you were born in or the minute that you were born in. But then all of a sudden, I end up falling into this situation where somebody goes, oh, can I do your human design for you? And I'm like, whatever, you go ahead and do it. And then they start talking about it and it's way better than this horoscope thing. And like down to stage of life and then down to the interpersonal relationships I was having and stuff. So I guess what I'm willing to say is my skepticism has been pushed because I've definitely seen some things that go beyond intuition. There's something stronger there. So maybe for anybody who doesn't really know what human design is, maybe you can start with that and then we can start dealing with my skepticism.
Yeah, I love it. And I love it because your story is my story. My background, I'm a behavioral coach and trained in so much psychometric profiling tools. So when human design came into my world, although I was definitely spiritual, I was a closet spiritual person and I was coaching CEOs and C-suite and there was no way I was going to be using anything that looked even slightly woo. And the truth is with human design, and this is what I say to everyone, now that I've used both, we used a lot of disc profiling. The truth is, at the end of the day, whenever we do psychometric profiling, we are answering questions. So what we're doing is we're actually engaging our mind. We're engaging our identity. So who we think we are. Now, when we use our human design, we're using a reading from a moment in time when subatomic particles called neutrinos travel through our body at the time of birth and they imprint us. Now, these neutrinos, you can go and check them out. There's a $100 million facility in Japan that's studying them. What they do is they imprint us with these themes. What I've come to understand is that human design is the energetic imprint beneath our identity, our behavior, our personality. It's influencing those things.
Okay, how? I get the idea, I get the idea. I was like, for example, when my human design was done, it was then, somebody got it for Kirsty and me as a wedding gift recently. So, I'd already had a glimpse of it a few years before, but somebody now did like these full charts and brought us in for a session and so on. And the funny thing is, it came out, that I was a generator, whatever, and I was reading it. It's like, it doesn't actually match. Like, there you go. It doesn't actually match. So then, of course, the problem I have is that nobody knows what time I was born. My mom doesn't know, like nobody actually knows. So I was born around midnight on that particular night and at some point within that hour. So then, of course, what I did is I went and had the chart done again based on 10-minute increments through that window. And there's this one window where I would be a manifesting generator, and all of a sudden everything, like the description, starts to make sense. I hear the theory, but I mean, why do the neutrinos at 1217 dictate to me a different personality and life decision and life track than at 1236?
Cool. So because the celestial bodies that where they are in the sky, actually in human design, they're aligned to these things called what we call gates. So human design itself is a synthesis of Western astrology, the Kabbalah, Tree of Life, the I Ching, which is the Chinese Book of Changes, and the Hindu chakra system. So these four systems are mathematically mapped together. So when we know that moment in time and how those neutrinos literally as they move through our body, neutrinos actually pick up matter and drop off matter. They drop off these tiny particles. And what they do in our body is they influence us. So at that time, at that reading, we can look at human design, which is this synthesis of four wisdoms, and then we can take the very specific themes that were dropped off in us, if you like. So, for example, many people will hear their type and they might say, yeah, kind of. But the deeper you go, I'm keeping in mind that we have over 2 billion expressions of the human design chart. The deeper you go, the more detailed it gets. So if astrology is looking at a planet in your third house, human design, we're not just looking at the astrology, we're actually looking at, one of the very specific hexagrams, what we call gates, which have this very specific theme. And then we're actually looking at it down to what's called a line number. So then we even make it more specific. So in our chart, we have a number of these themes, and the way everything moves together is about how the energy moves through our body and how, it's going to help us understand, well, what are our superpowers? What are our challenges? What energy do we actually have? Because some of us, like you and I'm a manifesting generator, we actually have a lot of energy when we're following what lights us up, and we just assume everyone else does, but they just don't. So when we can dive into our human design, we can look at the macro, which is simply how does my energy, my aura, this bubble that we can measure around us, it's about 3 feet either side of us, how does that interact with everyone else's energy? And then we can go right down into the super details, like, well, what is my number one core talent that I'm on the planet to give to the world?
I like the theory of that because I think that I very often see people, struggling at what they think they're supposed to be doing, or what their parents projected upon them, or what, social values have suggested them would be rewarding. And then, of course, to wake up at some point, in their life and realize, oh, that's not what I want to be when I grow up, or that's not what I want to be focused on. And routinely, when I see somebody finding that unique ability or that unique trait and leveraging it, they typically become more contented. I wonder about this because, of course, in my work over the last 15 years, I've spent a lot of time with hunter-gatherer tribes and so on, and they don't have the diversity of, say, occupational distractions or even entertainment distractions. I mean, if you're a boy, 95% you're going to be a hunter. If you're a girl, 95% you're going to be a gatherer and a mom. And, that's going to be the direction you're going to go in. How would this have manifested in much earlier humans where you don't have this disparity of interest and this disparity of occupational opportunity?
Yeah, so this is such a fantastic question, because this is what I talk about all the time. Because when we look through the frame of human design, you're not going to get your design and go, oh, you should be a doctor. You're actually going to look at your authentic blueprint. So for example, one of my core talents is actually facilitating a breakthrough through my unique insight. When I follow my human design, my strategy, my authority, how I'm guided through life, I have my own internal guidance system, my own authority that says, okay, this is the area in which I'm going to bring this core talent. So your human design is going to be active it's active in any human on the planet, any cat, any dog, any horse. Like, we can look up our animals as well. And so it's always expressing. And ultimately, when we talk about human design, it's not like the disc profiling. It's going to say, okay, well, you're more suited for this. It's actually saying, okay, when you choose to be your most authentic self, then you will be led through your own authority, through, whether it's serendipity, to the work that you're here to do in the world. And people like you and I, when we went to school, we were told, pick something. And a manifesting generator is like, I can't pick one thing. You know, I've been a very successful advertising executive. I've been a chef. I've been a semi-professional equestrian sport rider. You name it, I've almost done it. And the society would say to me, pick something, you're a failure, what are you doing? But actually, I'm designed to move through life that way. Every single different career was just another brick in the road that I was creating.
I can relate to that. I've had a very varied sort of professional life, ranging from different businesses to industries to different things. And I've often had that, like, it's been such an eclectic road, but I couldn't imagine doing it any other way. I would get bored, you know, if
Exactly.
the idea of having a career for life and retiring at 65 and having done this for, I mean,
I agree.
all right. So I understand that in your case, I mean, you were living your sort of, I guess, corporate identity, and you went through a fairly significant sort of, you know, personal breakdown process, and that kind of opens your door to this. So maybe walk us through that a little bit. What's your journey of discovery?
Yeah, sure. So mine, and I'll give you the edited version. It started when I was 28 and I was diagnosed with depression and panic disorder. I was given this diagnosis and told that I would not heal from it, but I'd learn to manage it. And I was sitting in this time of my life where I just left an advertising career. We had moved from Melbourne out into the country, and I was working with horses. I'd always loved horses. I'd always been really good at it competitively. I'm managing this property and I'm in the worst shape of my life, and I'm given this diagnosis. And basically, I remember thinking, well, I have two choices. Either I am going to work out how I got here. How did I get to this diagnosis? Because if I can work that out, then I can get out of it. Or I'm just not going to go on because I can't live like this for the rest of my life. It's just not for me. So really, that was my catalyst, that dark night of the soul, that moment where something bigger in us says, all right, I'm not going to accept this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I have nothing left, but somehow I'm just going to say that this leading expert is wrong and find another way. And that really started me on the journey to understand my behavior, the brain. It led me ultimately to becoming a coach, and then started a corporate business. So I was working with C-suite, running workshops, you know, focused on leadership. I'd healed my mental health. We'd moved back to Sydney. We'd had kids, like the whole thing. And I just remember one day, January in 2018, I'm sitting on the bed and I'm like, I've completely transformed my life. How come I still feel like there's something missing? How come I still have a hole? And that kind of initiated me into a pilgrimage, literally. I walked 800 kilometers, 500 miles across Spain. And ultimately that led me to human design. And I remember when I'd kind of had one of those moments where you're down on your knees and I'm like, dude, universe, you really need to smack me in the face with what this missing piece is. And the truth is that I'd been shown human design a couple of times, but the language was really negative. I'm a behavioral coach, don't do negative language. I wasn't ready to share a spiritual tool with my clients. And I wasn't really sure, you know, I was very skeptical myself. And then finally, when I was just pushed to that point where I kind of got delivered human design on a platter back when no one was talking about it, I just made a commitment. Okay, well, if this is what I'm meant to do, then I'll run the experiment, because that's what human design is. I will follow my strategy, authority, type, all these things. And if life gets better, then I'll stick with it. But if it doesn't, then I won't. And at that time, I actually I Googled the leading human design teacher in Australia, and there was only one, and she trained with the original creator. And I met her the next day because she happened to live 10 minutes away from me. And this complete stranger literally read into me. She put language to things that I'd felt all my life, but I had never said out loud or never been able to fully language what that was. So that was really the moment where I stopped trying to make my purpose happen. And instead, I just followed the bouncing ball effectively, became more myself, more authentic, became the authority in my own life, really discovered, okay, well, this is the way I'm designed to be in the world. And as I followed that path, it kind of unfolded in front of me. So I just saw this massive difference after working to burn out twice in an advertising career, where all of a sudden who I am at my core is really the most important thing. This is how I serve the planet. So I just continued following it, and the rest is history, as they say.
Our school system, and I don't think yours in Australia was so different than mine in Canada, that, you get a report card and, oh, you did well in this, but you didn't do so well in that. And they redirect your energy to the thing you didn't do so well at. And so you spend 12 years being told to focus on your weaknesses, 12 years to focus on the things that weren't fun, 12 years to focus on the things you weren't that good at. And you wonder now why people go off into the professional world and agree to take on jobs that they're not so good at, jobs that they don't find so fun, and jobs that that they really can't get the result, and it creates a bunch of anxiety for them. And so I think whatever the tool is that people are using, if they can get to a place where they really identify their natural traits and they can identify a sense of purpose, then magnifying that amount of time in that place is really valuable. There was something you said about, instead of chasing your purpose, you let it come to you. Well, something I've been saying about this for years, which I think fits really well, is that I see people running these workshops. It's like, we're going to help you find your purpose. I'm like, I can't help but think, if you have to find your purpose, it's not your purpose. Like, if you have to go discover it, if you have to go searching for it, if you're asking ChatGPT what your purpose is, then it isn't really your purpose. Your purpose finds you. And I guess maybe what I'm hearing here is that with human design, what you're doing is saying, hey, I'm going to help you identify the way you make decisions and the way you do things. And so you don't have to feel uncomfortable when you're doing them, and you don't have to force yourself to do other things. And as a result of that, maybe your purpose becomes more clear to you. Does that sound right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I love it. And I would take it one step further. The way I look at purpose is I am my purpose. That's my purpose, to be me, like to
Yeah.
live this life as me. And as I go along that path, especially as a manifesting generator, I'm going to do the work that lights me up. I'm here to build. I'm here to build the things that light me up. So, my purpose might be to, right now we're so down the rabbit hole with business owners, with visionaries very specifically. And for now, that's my purpose. That's what I'm here to do. But my deeper purpose is actually just to be me, to be the most authentic version of me. Because when I'm that, the opportunities find me, and then, my 3D skills, of course, oh, wow, I'm so good at this. Like, it's not that I'm so good at it. It's that I'm in the right place at the right time that's correct for me to serve the people that I'm here to serve.
Yeah, I feel that very much. About 12 years ago, I got invited to do a bunch of speaking with Tony Robbins, and I really hadn't done much speaking. It wasn't really my thing, but I enjoyed it and it went well. And then it turned out maybe it was my thing. And I sort of divested from the traditional brick and mortar businesses that I've been involved with. And I became a full-time teacher and speaker. I started writing programs and getting into writing books and all that kind of stuff. And I just say, like, professionally, I've never felt more fulfilled ever in my life. I've had some exciting, incredible consulting jobs and businesses. I had a film studio where I got to work on major films like Avatar, Pirates of the Caribbean. We were doing incredible work. And yes, it was fun, but it wasn't the sort of purpose-driven feeling that I have today. I'm about to start a 5-day speaking training that I do. I do 15 hours a day on stage. It's among the hardest work that I ever do, and I'm shattered by the end of it. It takes a year to recover to do the next one. But the feeling of purpose in it is unbelievably strong for me. And you said something earlier about facilitating breakthrough for people. Sometimes I just have that thing where they're asking a question, or I can feel what the disconnect for them is, and I just somehow know what the right question to ask is to have them see it another way. And I really love doing that work. I am completely behind the idea that when you identify who you really are and you live into that reality, life is better. I still have a harder time with it's driven by what time I was born and where I was on the planet, but I can't argue with what I've seen. I'm going to give you a little bit of a personal example. So we had charts done for the whole family, and then for people that aren't in the family or that used to be in the family. Let's say I have someone that I had a prior relationship with who is currently behaving in a way that to any external person looking would consider it to be unhealthy, like there's something wrong. And then of course somebody gives us the chart and you go, oh, that's what they're supposed to be doing. That's that, it was, and I have to say again, I'm like, I don't like this, but I can't fault it.
I love that. I don't like this, but I can't fault it. And you know what? This is the thing that I say all the time, because that was me. I actually don't care. Now, I don't care. I don't care that it's my time of birth, because what I do care about is the results I get. Does this work for my clients? Does this work for me? And one of the big pieces of human design is you're not going to get your human design chart and go, wow, I never knew that about myself. You're going to say, wow, you just gave me the permission slip to be me. And even the story you just told me about speaking, I'm sitting here, I only know the simplest macro part of your design. And the fact that you're fulfilled, that's the word I would use, by speaking, of course you are, because you're a manifesting generator. We have a motor directly to the throat, and that motor is connected to our passion. So when we are speaking our passion, there's a really good chance we're going to feel fulfilled.
Yeah, I really can tell the difference. And it's not even fulfilled, it's that there's a strange magnetic attraction difference. Like, when I look at my first business, which was, in mobile computing and logistics management, all this kind of stuff, and I at that point I was so terrified of speaking, I would never do it. But I am now really clear that had I discovered that about myself, I would have easily 10x the value of that business. So it's not just, I hate to make it about that, but the fact is that it's not just about being fulfilled. It's that it magnifies attraction. When you are in your flow, you're doing what you're meant to be doing. When you're feeling that level of fulfillment, people want to do it with you. And I really,
100%.
yeah, I noticed that heavily when I jumped into where I'm headed now. So let me ask you then another maybe medium controversial question. And again, as I saw the first charts and readings and stuff, and recognize the non-genericness of it, such as I've seen in horoscopes or what have you. The deeper I went into it, the more reluctant I became to tell anybody when I was born. I now recognize that, I mean, in the same way that I recently had, our family had some DNA tests done for methylation and this kind of stuff, but we don't put your name on the DNA test. So we did it all under pseudonyms because, people can do stuff with your DNA. But I kind of feel like as interesting as human design is in terms of, say, personal development, the fact is, I think that if you know that much about somebody, it really probably opens the door to pretty keen manipulation.
This is such a great question, because I suppose I haven't really directly thought about it. However, I would say the opposite, because at the end of the day, what we're given, human design is it's like a strategy, a structure, the skeleton, it's underneath everything and how we bring it to life. So how we specifically express that, it's a felt experience. It's something that's felt within us. Now, yes, those that have been working with it forever and a day, we know it pretty deeply and intricately. People are blown away. But I don't think that you could use a human design chart against someone, because what it's doing is actually aligning you to your heart, your soul, your authenticity, your intuition, your own authority. And simply in that case, you would be so, I know for me, I'm so attuned with my authority, like I'll know pretty easily whether something's correct or not. And it's ultimately about changing the habit of giving our power away to someone else. Having said that, maybe if you are one of those nefarious people and you've got someone who doesn't know their design and hasn't been running the experiment, maybe, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I can only say the more you know about somebody, the more, I mean, whether you're marketing to them for their own good or manipulating them for your own good, the more you know about somebody, the more you're able to do that. So you take a look at, for example, you mentioned the common trait of speaking and throat connection, what have you. So if somebody's particularly driven to speak, to share, to educate, to inspire, to stimulate breakthrough and what have you, once you know that about them, you know what the carrot is to dangle for them. The real reason I bring this up is not to cast any shade on it. It's to say that I went from being skeptical to being, I don't want to share my birthday with you.
Yeah.
It's like
It's a big jump. And I love that jump, because it goes from like, hang on, you know too much about me. It's gone from, this is all phooey to, oh my God, this is too much. Honestly, I would think, I think about the way, ex-advertising career, the way research and data was used to advertise to people. The nuance of human design, as I said, more than 2 billion expressions, the nuance of every individual's human design is very specific. So to use it, let's say the example of to market to someone, it would be difficult because it's not like you can just market to the macro type. I mean, you could, but if you think about marketing these days, it's nowhere pinpointed enough. But then if you were going to go deeper and deeper and deeper, then it's getting too disseminated. So I don't think that would be really a very easy thing to do.
In a more positive way of
Yay.
looking at that, I created a GPT that was loaded with my human design chart and some of my own work and my writing and some other things. And I have to say that the type of problem solving that it was able to do with me based on looking at the human design chart was phenomenally interesting. And of course, that's a big shift because 2 years ago, somebody does their human design chart. Really, the only place they can go to get some expertise about that is to go read about it, to study it themselves, or to engage with a human design specialist. But the truth is, I think at this point, somebody goes off and gets their charts done. I would advocate that they actually work with a consultant to do that initially. But once they've had that grounding, I have to say, GPT has a pretty damn good understanding of it. What is your take on it?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I'm a line 5, so I'm all about the solutions. And we've actually already created this solution. And she's called Maggie Magnetic by Design. So she is all of my human design IP. She's everything we do to market, to grow the business. It's from, startup phase, growth, scale, and it's all around your specific design. So she, literally you're like, hey, I'm Maggie. You need to tell me your design, and then we'll build everything from there. So I do think that this is the future. I mean, I look at my business and I am successful because I have not listened to all the business coaches I've worked with or learned from. I am successful because I have created a business and built a business that is aligned for me. I don't burn out anymore. I don't work nearly as hard as I used to. I do what I love every single day. I hardly even know what day of the week it is because I just love what I do. So I actually believe that this is the future. One of my goals is that my kids, and they're still teenagers, that by the time they have kids, if they have kids, that their kids would go to school with their human design. Because right now, our education system is broken. It's about this imaginary line, like, well, this is who you are compared to this line. And that's offensive. Yes, this is going to be in business. This is going to be in education. It's going to be everywhere because when we build anything, do anything, create anything from the truth of who we are, then we're going to create things that last, that are great, that come from heart and soul, not ego and force. So yeah, I think we're at a time that's really exciting. When it comes to AI, comes to ChatGPT and those sort of things, what you need to be very conscious of is you have to give it the specifics of your design. So with something like astrology, you also need to give it your specifics because it doesn't have the software to run the chart, so it will get it wrong. But astrology has...
Worse than getting it wrong, it gets it just right enough that you don't think it's wrong.
So I'm really big on staying in the leadership role, that you're very specific at double checking all your details, because if I put my design in, like I'm talking about probably 25 to 30 different parts of my design, could even be up to 40 depending how deep I'm going, making sure you've got all of that detail. But the thing also we have to be aware of is something like astrology has been around since the internet, right? Astrology has been here forever. Human design's only been here since 1988. So it just doesn't have as much information. Now, does that mean it's not as accurate or powerful? No. But I do really like to say to people, it's amazing, get your design, go check it out, but also make sure that you do have some sort of guidance, check in, make sure it's heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to go back to, we touched on purpose and I think you said you are your purpose. And I used to express that in a really similar way. I always said that your purpose in life is just to enjoy this life as much as you possibly can. And ideally in the service of other people enjoying their lives as well. But I had a really interesting set of exchanges. So I've spent a lot of time with this one hunter-gatherer tribe in East Africa. The guy in the picture here is Nona. And over the years, I've been visiting him for 15 years. And over the years, I've interviewed them and interviewed him and so on. And recently, I had a funny thing happen where I had years ago, Tony Robbins had given me some questions to ask them. He wanted to ask them two questions. Weirdest thing is recently Jay Shetty asked me to ask the same two questions. And so I asked Nona about that. And the questions were, what is the purpose of life? And, what an interesting question to ask of somebody who's not been influenced by TikTok or television for that matter, or any kind of media. And his answer was, it was almost like I'd asked him, why do you breathe? Like
What's the point of skin?
it was like, this is a stupid question. But in the end, he humored me and he goes, well, your purpose is to be the best version of yourself that you could be. I mean, that's, and I was like, well, I came all the way into the deepest part of Africa to talk to some dude. Ram Dass could have told me this, right? And, or Tony Robbins for that matter, or Jay Shetty, any of them.
Yes.
And I said, yeah, but okay, I want to know more. Like, what does that mean? And he goes, well, what it means is, like, in my tribe, I'm a hunter. And so my goal is to be the very best hunter that I could be. Not to be better than any other hunter per se, but to be the best hunter that I can be. And I said, okay, but I'm here now. What should I do? And he goes, well, you're a guest, so you should be the best possible guest that you can be.
Yeah.
Then I said, but what if I want to move here and become a Hadza? What if I want to become, and he kind of rolls his eyes like, well, because there's no way I could do that. I mean, I'm tough as nails and I've done embedded stays with them, but by the end of a week, I am done. They're like, you're talking 10, 20 miles a day every day. Like it's not,
Wow.
And anyway, so I go, what if I want to come? And he kind of rolls his eyes and he goes, well, if you come here and you want to be a hunter, then your job is going to be to become the very best hunter that you could possibly be. It's like, it's that simple. And I know it hammers on the point, but it very much addresses a lot. I don't know what it was like for you, but I imagine that for your grandparents, they pretty much had their career laid out for them, right? And then they probably had some pretty strong opinions about what your parents were going to do or not do. And then your parents probably had a more open view for you, but still had guidance for you. And then you've probably told your teenagers they can be whatever they want. Is it
Pretty much,
okay,
yeah.
pretty much, right? And I think it's great. I mean, I'm all about freedom, and I think it's fabulous to give kids that freedom. But then at the same time, there's a problem because you see, if you're told doctor or lawyer, then you flip the coin, you pick one, and at the end of the day, it is what it is. But when you're told you can be anything you like, and then you're manipulated by media and what actually is cool, and what your friends think is cool, and all this kind of stuff. Wow, does that ever set kids up for, like, I don't know, I don't even know how to face a world where you can be anything you like. Would you say that, given that you want to see human design, brought into education and that kind of thing, would you say kids having a keener understanding of this, of being able to identify their sort of key traits and stuff, would help them avoid the pitfall of infinite possibility? That would help them to choose paths that are more likely to be fulfilling?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. The first thing is that when we're told, so when I was told that I can do whatever I want, right? My dad didn't follow his path and he was very clear. He was like, you do whatever you want. And I was determined. All through my teenage years, I will never go into advertising. I've seen what it's done to my parents. The first job I get is at a TV network in the sales department. I think a part of that was because I could be whatever I wanted to be. And I'm like, I don't know, who knows what I want to be? I got into university to be a teacher, but I deferred for a year, which was very common here in Australia. And I was going to go find myself, but then I got a job and I started a career. Now, the thing that I love about human design, and I have literally got a teenage son who is finishing school now. He has got a year off between school and whatever he's going to do next. And he can be whatever he wants to be. But the fundamental difference is he doesn't have to wade through a bunch of stuff out there that he thinks he should do or he thinks he might like, or, that feels good because my friends talk about it. He's actually been told since he was pretty little, you got to follow your gut. You got to follow the things that light you up. You've got to go after what your body like literally pulls you to go after. So my kids aren't about, doctor, lawyer, whatever. Cooper knows, well, Mum, I'm taking a year off and I'm going to go climb mountains and I'm going to meet people because that's one of my superpowers. And I know that I'd probably want to work in the financial industry, but I'm at the cusp. So I don't want to do it the way they used to do it, but I'm going to do it differently. So this kid knows how to A, set intention, and B, how to listen to himself. I just bought him this amazing suit for his formal. And I'm like, babe, you need to take this overseas with you and just set the intention that you will be invited to incredible parties where you will meet people. And so his design actually, not only does it teach him what to go after, it teaches him what to just ignore, because he doesn't listen to out there, he listens to in here.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So you've got a successful podcast on human design. I'm curious about that because I've been doing this podcast. I think we're on 20 episodes or something like that. And given my topic, there's an endless array of conversations we've had. People coming to talk about the dynamics between men and women from an evolutionary perspective. We had an erectile dysfunction specialist come and help. Like we had all this interesting guests, and I don't think it ever stops. But with human design, I'm curious how do you continue to generate content around that that's fascinating for a big, we have many of our clients want to be speaking, teaching, and having a podcast and that kind of stuff. So I'm curious, with such a narrow focus, how have you made it so successful and how do you make it continue to keep it engaged?
Yeah, this is what we teach every day in business, right? Is that because of the specifics of my design, I know that so much of the pathway for my business is about my own experience, my own solutions. So, because I'm a personal profile, I've got the line 3, which is all about experimentation. I've got the line 5, which is all about leadership and solutions. So all of a sudden, I've got these really big macro ideas. But then when I go deeper, I know that probably the biggest part of my design is community. That's probably one of my biggest pieces. Now, how do we keep it fresh? I literally follow my strategy and authority. Everything that we've done to build this business, the success of my podcast, people say to me, okay, how do I get a podcast as successful as yours? I'm like, dude, I don't know how you get a podcast as successful as I did, but I do know how I can teach you to make it that successful. People always ask, how did you get a book published with Penguin in Australia, England, and the US? I'm like, I just followed my strategy and authority. I can't tell you mentally, I can't train you exactly that pathway. But what I can do is I can show you how you can follow your own pathway to the modalities that are correct for you. And ultimately, this is how we keep it fresh, because everything that we're teaching, because I'm a manifesting generator. So if I was a projector, let's say, my business would look really different. I would probably be the expert in, there's a part of our design called our PHS system or the 4 transformations. So I would probably be this expert in the 4 transformations because they're all about going deep and being like the real guide and expert and nuanced. But for me, I'm a manifesting generator. So I'm actually about, my business is designed to pivot. So much of my business, yes, it was just human design in the beginning. We are really focusing hard on business right now. We've done a lot around purpose and abundance. The thing for us is even when we're building offers or we're building marketing or, our dream clients, it's always about whatever this specific offer is, what we're focused on now. Whereas a lot of business coaches are going to be like, no, you need to pick one audience, you got to stick with them and you got to you've got your solution, just get better at it. And that's not the way I'm designed. If I was a generator, one of my dear friends, she's a leading expert in marketing with human design because she's like, I'm on this path. This is my path of mastery. But again, my design says I'm going to master a bunch of things. So that's the way my business is designed.
Yeah, that makes a great deal of sense to me, both in terms of how many people get it wrong and then also how to get it right. And what I mean is that what I've seen a lot is, say somebody wants to become a speaker and then they go out and they look at somebody like Tony Robbins and then they go, wow, I should do that. And I'm like, well, no, because you're not Tony Robbins. And
Exactly.
you have to find your own way of doing that. And I think that's a really powerful message that it's very important to learn from and potentially model aspects of somebody else's strategy. But unless you're really similar to them, and we could argue in this case, unless you have a very, very similar human design to them, then their strategy isn't necessarily going to work for you. I resonate with what you're saying on the variety thing. One of the biggest challenges that I've had in business since I started actually following my passion of teaching is that I have such an eclectic set of interests that I like to teach on. And, so for example, if I go out and, hire an agency to represent me, they're like, well, wait a minute now. You're a serial entrepreneur and you speak on business and marketing, but you also speak on evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology. And then also you teach public speaking, communicate, it's good. And I'm lucky enough that I can do all of those things at a high grade. But I guess what I'm trying to get at is that on one side, I feel very blessed that I'm able to do those things. But on the other side, I do sometimes feel like, it's distracting.
Do you think Da Vinci was distracted?
I imagine so.
Yeah, right. So why does that
Although
matter?
I wonder though, I think that's a great question you asked because I wonder if he was. I wonder if maybe what happened was is once passion was ignited on something, he definitely appeared to be able to take it to completion. And a
Mm,
lot of creative types have a hard time with that, right? Like they start something, but they get distracted in, I often say that the difference between a visionary and a delusional is simply execution. You know,
yes.
a fine line is I saw Roger Federer talking about this the other day, is like it turns out that he only won like, something like 52% of his points that he ever played, but he won 80% of his games because he won the
Mm,
right points. And I think there's something like that here as well, is that when you're, say, into a variety of different things and so on, a lot of them might not work out exactly right. But I guess the issue is that you actually find a way to stay focused on the ones you need to stay focused on and get them to some level of completion.
yeah, but I'd also challenge like that when you're in alignment, you will follow it to completion because you have the energy to complete it. Now, I think the biggest challenge people have is when I always talk about we need to understand the difference between being out of our comfort zone and being out of alignment. Because if we're in alignment, we're going to keep going, right? We're going to hit that like, there's my comfort zone. Oh, this is really uncomfortable. My ego is telling me all my excuses, but my whole body is still pulling me forward. So I'm just out of my comfort zone. But if we're out of alignment, that's when we end up not doing things because we actually started it way back there from a place of the mind, I should, as opposed to the heart or what we would call the authority that says, this is your path.
All right, help me out. If somebody wants to find your podcast or if they want to come and work with you, how do they find you? How do they make that happen?
Yeah, easy. So you can go to my website, which is emmadunwoody.com, and you can get your free chart and you'll get a 17-page free download of your chart because yes, human design is hugely complicated. And on that note, you can always get my book, which is Human Design Made Simple, which really sets you up with your human design and gives you a practical experiment to try so that you can implement your human design. And then, yeah, you can then go over to the Human Design podcast, take your chart, get the book, listen to the podcast, and you're sweet.
Okay, well, we'll make sure we include all of that in the show notes so people can find their way to you. I appreciate so much you making the time to make this happen. And yeah, very informative and interesting. Thanks so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, everybody, another episode of A Wilder Life, this time talking about human design and pushing my own limits of skepticism versus, well, acceptance of some form. But I hope you found it interesting. I certainly have. I will say to you that if you are at all like me sitting on that skepticism fence, then what I would suggest is a truly scientific skeptic is willing to test things. And what I suggest you do is you go and check out Emma's work or human design work and have a chart done and look at it. I have to tell you, it's been pretty impressive to me. More mysteries will be solved on another episode of A Wilder Life. For now, stay wild. Make sure that you subscribe and comment and do all that stuff you're supposed to do to help us get the word out there. Thank you so very much, and I'll see you in our next episode.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of A Wilder Life. Please leave a review and share it. A Wilder Life with Eric Edmeades.